Yo.
Welcome to the Wednesday, January 14th edition of the Just Baseball Show. You got managing editor of justbaseball.com, Ryan Finkelstein, and I'm Peter Apple. And Ranger Suarez is a Boston Red Sox on a 5-year deal, $130 million. We're also going to play general manager for the Detroit Tigers and the Minnesota Twins. And last but certainly not least, filling out our 2026 Hall of Fame ballot with Paul Hembekides of ESPN. And it's all brought to us by BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code JustBaseball when signing up, and you will get up to a $1,500 new player offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app, sign up using bonus code JustBaseball. Deposit at least $10, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if that bet loses. Once you do, on top of the new player offer, the pro football playoffs are finally here, and BetMGM is giving you 2 ways to make every snap even bigger. First up, the Odds Boost token, activated on any pro football playoffs bet, and if your pick hits, you're looking at an even bigger payout. Simple as that. And if you want a little extra peace of mind, grab your no sweat token, attach it to a qualifying bet, and if things don't go your way, you'll get your stake back in bonus bets. No sweat. Literally, that's code JustBaseball on BetMGM. Think special Wednesday episode. We got a lot to talk about, but first, I want to address the elephant in the room. I'm going to read this comment from Avery Stanley. First of all, thank you to everybody joining us on YouTube. If you do love the YouTube live streams, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button, and we'll be answering comments along the way. Sox still doing nothing, or did Peter get them confused with the Yankees on the GM episode yesterday? Well, first, the Yankees did make a major blockbuster move. Where were you? They brought in the closest thing to Randy Johnson in Ryan Weathers. But I did say on yesterday's show that I've been saying for years that the Red Sox are not operating in these buckets by signing, especially a pitcher like this, to a $100 million deal. And I've been right every step of the way. But the timing definitely doesn't work for me. And now they decide to go with Ranger Suarez at 5 years, $130 million. Now, I love it. I'm a big fan of Ranger Suarez. I'm glad that the Red Sox are adding. I've been wanting them to do these things. I've been wanting them to act like the big market team that they are. This comes out of frustration and seeing fans so upset, knowing they deserve more. And they finally did it. I'm not going to apologize for everything that I've said, because everything up to this point has been 100% correct. But now they finally did it. Good for them. This was a good move.
It was a good move. I was a little surprised, for one, how quickly it came together, because we just hadn't heard anything on Framber or Ranger for weeks. And all we did hear was the Orioles might be in, the Mets might be in on a short-term deal, and there was really nothing else that was reported. And then out of nowhere, Ranger Suarez goes to the Red Sox. We were talking before recording. To me, it's very similar to last year with the Yankees picking up Fried after losing out on Soto, where it's just go spend your money on the free agent you like the most. And clearly they liked Ranger Suarez the most to come in and be that number 2 that they want in their rotation. You now have a couple of options with Sonny Gray that you picked up in Ranger Suarez. I think, maybe they're 2 high-end threes, but either way, this Red Sox rotation is pretty solid now.
Let's talk about Ranger just as the pitcher.
Yeah.
Lowest postseason ERA since integration. 40 innings. Look at that list. Everyone can see it on YouTube, but for the audio crowd, lowest postseason ERA since integration, minimum of 40 innings. Mariano Rivera at number 1 at 0.70, Sandy Koufax at 0.95, Steven Strasburg at 1.46, and Ranger Suarez with a 1.48 ERA. This guy is cold-blooded, and you have to be, or at least have a little bit of cold blood if you're going to pitch in Fenway in the postseason against lineups like we have in the American League East. And Ranger Suarez is that guy. I remember so vividly watching Phillies Braves at the bank. Now, I know he was pitching at home, so it's a little bit easier, but there's still a lot of pressure in an in-division game like that. And that was a really, really good Braves team. And what did he do? Sat him down easy. And I always remember this exact moment. He got it was like a short hopper right back to him as a ground ball. And he just takes his time, walks over there, tosses the ball over, just like he's playing catch with his father. It was, and as he's walking off the mound back to the dugout, I say, that is a cold motherfucker. That guy is built for any situation. So the Red Sox are bringing in a guy like that. The issue is he's not exactly a guy who's going to consistently eat innings. Not to say that he can't, but he's never been over 160 innings. And Podcast P actually brought this up to us pre-record and said he's actually never qualified technically for an ERA title since he's never thrown 160 innings. And technically it's 162, 1 inning per every game in a major league season. But still, it's 150 innings every year, mid-threes, low-threes ERA with high-level postseason experience. My only question is, so I love the fit, I love the player, and I think the money is okay. Let's talk about the money real quick before we talk about the Red Sox and the rotation, what else they need to do. The money. You said pre-record, it was a little bit more than you thought. I agree with you.
Yeah, my projection was 5 for 110. So I had him at 22 million per year. So this comes in at 26 million per year. So that's a little more than I was expecting. But again, I think it's a matter of the Red Sox being aggressive. And if it's a couple more $1 million a year to get something done and to not miss out on another free agent, good on them for getting the deal done. But I do think it's a little bit higher than I expected. The one concern I have about this, it isn't really paying Ranger 26 million now, but if he keeps the trend of losing velocity, what does the last, the 4th and 5th year of this contract look like? I think, 2026, if that's all you care about. Yeah, I think 26 million is cool. I'm just wondering about the back end of this deal. But again, there was only a couple impact free agent starting pitchers left on the market, and you got one.
And if you have to pay a little bit more in order to get the free agent, like I'm totally okay with that, right? 22 million a year versus $26 million a year. The Red Sox are a rich franchise. They can afford it, even though sometimes they tell us that they can't, even though they obviously can. I'm not worried about this in a vacuum. I think it's a good deal. I guess I'm just a little bit confused about the timing, and confused is the wrong word, I would say. More just questioning it. And what I mean by that is the Red Sox rotation before they added Ranger Suarez was one of the better in the American League. And it wasn't just top-end talent when you have Garrett Crochet, a top 3 pitcher in the world, Sonny Gray, Brian Baio, Connolly Early, Peyton Tolley, Patrick Sandoval. They have so many guys. Is allocating $130 million to the pitching staff when you look at the offense and you feel that that's the biggest need for this team? And I will stick to my guns on the Red Sox. I don't think it's Ranger and Bichette. I just don't. Now, again, they could prove me wrong here, and this could be an offseason where they are spending a lot more than we think. But I also thought spending on Ranger was more than I thought. I don't think it's Ranger and Bichette.
No. To me, I think, like, you look at the free agent market, if it wasn't going to be Bichette, it's like, all right, well, where can you spend? They could have made a pursuit of Eugenio Suarez, but if they don't like him at third base defensively, maybe this is the best way we can spend our money. And now with that depth that they have accumulated in their rotation, maybe it frees them up a little bit more to trade a Peyton Tolley if they can get some type of an impact position player. Who is that position player? I don't know, because I don't know exactly who fits. If Ketel Marte was still the perfect fit, like if they could turn this around and somehow pull off the trade that the Diamondbacks said they're not going to make, and they put an offer on the table that gets them to go back on that, all of a sudden we're talking about the Red Sox having one of, if not like the best offseason of any team. But it doesn't seem like that's out there. So what is the next move to round out this lineup? It does feel like they have to do something to make the pieces fit together more and to add an infielder. It's just, we don't know what that next move is. And it doesn't seem like, if you're not getting Bichette, which, like you said, I can't see them signing both. We didn't even think they would sign one. Then there's not much left in the free agent market to address that infield. So it makes me think maybe they're going to trade a pitcher now to address their need in the infield.
I think you're spot on. I think they're going to use either a Connolly Early or a Peyton Tolley in order to go get a Brendan Donovan,
Yeah.
a Nico Horner, an Isak Paredes. Because when you have this many arms, and I wouldn't even be that surprised to see them trade one of those guys for a bat and trade Brian Bayo. Because when you look at Brian Bayo's contract, it was a 6-year, $50-60 million extension, but it's severely backloaded. And the next 2 years, so this year and next year, are around 6 to 8 million apiece. But then it gets into 12 and 15 and 18. And I think potentially he could be on the move with how substantial the returns are for pitchers, especially young ones with plenty of years of control. And a team could look at Brian Bayo and say, well, we don't really want to trade him in 2 years when he starts to get expensive. We'll actually give you more now. The Red Sox, by signing Ranger Suarez, put them in an advantageous spot in order to trade some of these arms. So I wonder if that's their thinking, or if they're just saying, we're going to load up on pitching. Our starting rotation is going to be as good. Let's go into spring training and make sure that all of these guys are ready for opening day, because you never know with injuries. And maybe they make some low budget moves with the bats and just say, we're a pitching team. I think they have set themselves up for success, because when you look at the current rotation, it's as good as any in the American League.
It is. And look, you just, like I said, you freed yourself up to make some other moves. You now have a rotation with Crochet and Ranger locked up. So you have two guys that you're building around. So I think you're in a really good spot still to sort of pivot out of what I think everyone could kind of agree was, a change of course when they didn't get Bregman, and you can still turn this into a really good offseason. And I mean, if they were to pull off the Brendan Donovan trade, how would you like where this team's at if they just make that one more move?
I would really like this team. I think this team is one big bat away from true American League pennant conversations, contention.
Yeah.
Like, I think that they could end up being the best team in the American League if they had one more big bat. And that could, I don't know if Brendan Donovan is that bat, but I think Nico Horner could be. I think Isak Paredes could be. And it's so funny. I was thinking about Isak Paredes today because we had a big debate yesterday. He is the system quarterback in Major League Baseball. He is Coors Field embodied in a player. Where if you tell me he's in Fenway, if you tell me he's at in Houston, I think he could be a forward player who hits 30 home runs or at least slaps a ton of doubles. But you put him in Wrigley, you put him in some stadiums where it's not too kind to right-handed bats, my opinion on him falls far lower, just because he's such a unique bat where he relies so much on pulling fly balls in the air. And they don't go very far. It's not like he has incredible contact quality where it doesn't matter how far the fences are. You need those fences close in left field, and then he could pepper the wall with them. So if the Red Sox were to get Paredes, I love the fit there. I also think Nico Horner is the best of the bunch because of his all-around game. And Brendan Donovan is at least a 3 to 3.5 win player. Paredes might be the most impactful bat, but I also don't want to trade another bat to go get that bat. I'd rather trade for our pitching depth.
So, I mean, it's funny. We're now playing GM for the Astros, but I mean, for the Astros and the Red Sox. I'm trying to think about a trade. Like, would you trade if you traded Bayo for Paredes? Do you get like Paredes plus? Do you get more on top of it, or is that just like a straight deal? But what I would say though is if you now view yourself as having extra depth that you can trade from in your rotation, the Astros need starting pitching still, I think. So maybe those teams line up better for a trade now. And I do think Paredes, if I had to pick a bat of Paredes, Donovan, and Horner, I think Paredes fits the Red Sox the most. Yeah, I think that's the biggest impact bat that you can add to the middle of your lineup.
And then you move Marcelo Meyer over to second.
Yeah.
Or who knows? Maybe you get something out of Christian Campbell this year. You never know. But at least you have two options there. And I like the idea of running with one of these young infielders. One more quick thing. Largest free agent signing for the Red Sox since 2022. Just to answer the original thing that people are accusing me of.
Was that
Largest,
Trevor Story?
yeah, Trevor Story. So in
That was
3 years,
140.
yeah, in 4 years actually, $130 million, the largest since Trevor Story. So
Wow.
you did it. You did it. You did it.
Spent.
And I'm being as truthful as I can. I am happy for the Red Sox that they made this deal. The fans deserve this. The fans have not deserved what has been happening, trading stars, letting big free agents walk. Ranger Suarez is as cold-blooded as they come. He's been as consistent as a lot of pitchers in Major League Baseball. When you look at the totality of the season, he has these really hot stretches and then some cold stretches, but overall it's 150 innings at a mid-threes basically every single season over the last 3 to 4 seasons. So you're getting a really solid pitcher and a guy who is not afraid of the moment. And right now, I think you can make a strong argument that the Red Sox, at least come opening day, have the best rotation in the American League. Ready to talk or anything else before we move on to Tigers and Twins?
No, I don't think so. I mean, all I'd say is at this point with this contract, what it boils down to, you get Ranger hot in one postseason, it sort of pays for itself, right?
Yep.
So I think we can envision the Red Sox making a run with Crochet and Ranger, and that's why you make this move.
Exactly. All right, you ready to play? Ready to play GM with the Tigers and the Twins?
I am.
Peyton, Podcast P, if you could give us a quick whoosh before we begin. Playing general manager for the Detroit Tigers. Let's go over a few things like payroll and the transactions that they've made already before jumping into the moves that we would make to help the Tigers win the division and hopefully go on a playoff run. Their current payroll is about $200 million. That's after tax. And it puts us in a tough position. Why? The Tigers' payroll last year was about $188 million. So my guess is the Tigers don't want to go that much higher than they were last year. If you just look at cash payroll, they were about 155 last year, $171 million this year, according to Fangraphs. So knowing that, I tried to operate without spending much money, but at the same time, making moves to get them a hell of a lot better because the Tigers do feature one of the better farm systems in Major League Baseball, and they have a glut at the top. And I say glut in the best way possible. Their top 4 prospects are elite, and their top 10 prospects, they have tons of guys that they can trade in order to make this team better for 2026 and beyond. Let's go over some of their transactions already. Gleyber Torres accepted the qualifying offer to return on a 1-year, $22.5 million deal. They re-signed Kyle Finnegan to a 2-year, $19 million deal. They signed Kenley Jansen to a 1-year, $11 million contract for this season, including a $9 million salary and a $12 million club option for 2027 with a $2 million buyout. And they also DFA'd, but then traded Justin Henry Malloy to the Rays for cash. So I think a big thing that the Tigers needed to do this offseason was address their bullpen. They bring back Kyle Finnegan, and they they signed Kenley Jansen, the future Hall of Famer. And we'll talk about Hall of Fame later with Hembo. I don't think it's enough. And it's not that they haven't brought in good arms, but a big reason why I'm not super bullish on this Tigers bullpen right now, even though I like the names, is the fact that they don't strike anybody out. Towards the bottom of the league in whiff rate, towards the bottom of the league in strikeouts per 9 as a bullpen. I would like to add a bullpen arm that misses bats, preferably at an elite rate. I also would like to add a starting pitcher, and I would like to add a good one. But how do we do that when we don't have a lot of money? That's where a trade potentially could come in. And I would also like to bring in a right fielder to platoon with Wenceel Perez. Because Wenceel Perez, I do feel like, is great when he's against lefties. But against righties, the majority of the time, and maybe it's Kerry Carpenter playing out there in right field and then he moves a DH, and that's fine, but I would like to bring in another bat. Are there any other needs before we get into specific moves that you found?
So I also think one option that I'll talk about a little bit, because I do have a move to get a third baseman, and then that could sort of push Zach McKinstry to more utility and even into the outfield. But I also want to mention, as we're sort of setting the stage for the Tigers, the Skubal arbitration number has to be addressed here because that directly impacts their spending. I mean, you're talking about the difference of $13 million. That right there can go out and get you a starting pitcher in free agency. And I've already seen some reports of if they lose the arbitration case, they might not be able to spend for a starting pitcher. So it's crazy how that kind of hangs over this team. And I don't think either of us is going to do any Skubal mock trades today, but Skubal is still sort of hanging over this offseason because you should be pushing the chips in to win in this 1 year with Skubal. But now if he's making 32 million, you might not have much room at all to add via free agency.
Yep. So the Skubal thing is definitely important, and I'm glad you brought it up. Do you think they need a shortstop? Because I think that should be Kevin McGonigal's job to lose next year.
Can we make that the first move? Because to me, I think give Kevin McGonigal the starting shortstop job on opening day, or give him the opportunity to. To me, that should be the number one move. That's one of the ways you can raise the ceiling of this team from day one.
And then your infield is Colt Keith at third, Kevin McGonigal at short, Gleyber Torres at second, Spencer Torkelson at first. Your infield is done. And then in the outfield, we'll start because this is a smaller move. I proposed a trade with the Astros when we were playing GM with them. Trade Jesus Sanchez to the Tigers for Eduardo Valencia and Blake Dickerson. Valencia is kind of a breakout prospect in the Tigers system, but I don't think they would feel it. They do have a lot of catchers in their system.
Yeah.
I'm okay with you are on the Tigers system, but do you like that idea of bringing in a Jesus Sanchez to platoon with a Wenzel Perez, and the Tigers in general could just use some more power in the lineup, and I think Jesus Sanchez could bring that.
So I think we're probably only adding one bat. Do you think, or you think there's room for more? They have so many different mouths to feed. I feel you can only kind of fit one. So I'll give you my pitch on the bat that I was looking at.
Yeah.
Let's say Bo Bichette signs with the Phillies.
Okay.
And all of a sudden Alec Bohm is on the trade block. You wouldn't think about trading for Alec Bohm, putting him at third base, and then you push McKinstry out to the outfield?
No, because Keith is at third. McKinstry already in this situation is probably some sort of a utility guy. I need to see what I have with Keith. If I'm the Tigers, I don't want to lock into a Bohm deal unless Philly's willing to eat all of the money. And he's not that good. Like, Alec Bohm is a lot closer to Ryan McMahon than people want to admit. And Ryan McMahon, I'm told, is untradeable.
See, that's the thing, is that you could pick up Bohm for like next to net. Like, you could pick up Bohm for like Jake Rogers and a pitching prospect where you're just,
I don't know if Bohm is better than Colt Keith next year at third.
Okay, well, so if we like Colt Keith, then that's obviously off the table. You know what else?
I'm just saying I'm in love with Colt Keith. I'm just saying he's had a few years to kind of get his feet wet a little bit. He's a good enough bat that I want to see what we got. He's flashed some real potential, was a top prospect of theirs. I think this is the season to give him the runway. I still have questions, but I'd much rather see him at third base opening day than an Alec Bohm, where I know what I'm getting. I am getting average to below average defense and average pop.
Yeah.
Like with the bat. I think Keith could be more.
I think that one thing that is glaring to me trying to do this exercise, this team should not have extended Gleyber Torres a qualifying offer. They could have filled second base for less money and done other things if they are this, constrained in their payroll.
I agree with you and I disagree with you. Do I think it's a lot of money? Yes. But I think that the Tigers need a professional veteran hitter in this lineup, and they really need a guy who doesn't strike out. Gleyber Torres struck out at a 16% rate this year. I mean, you have Riley Green who's striking out 200 times. There's a lot of guys in this lineup who are going to strike out. Gleyber Torres at least provides the opposite of that, which is putting the ball consistently in play, taking walks, and putting up professional ABs. I think they needed a guy like that in the lineup. Is $22 million a lot? Yes, but it's not a long-term commitment.
I hear you. To me, it's a 113 WRC plus, and you're spending 20. And he's not a great defender. You're spending $22 million on a subpar defensive second baseman that just doesn't strike out. Like, I feel like you can find other guys like that, but it's regardless. He's on the team. I think if we can lock in Sanchez to.
You like that trade?
Yeah, I'm good with that trade. Honestly, you look at the outfield market right now. Where else are you going? I mean, to get a left-handed bat. Now that Kepler's essentially off the board, self-inflicted, like.
You could maybe capitalize on his second half potentially. It's only the first 80 games.
Yeah. See, the issue with that is the postseason thing. Like, it's like impossible to figure out where Kepler would sign. But I don't even know what other left-handed outfield bat you'd like beyond that at this point. So I think Sanchez would be better than anybody we're going to get in free agency. So I think we can lock in that trade.
So for all Tigers fans listening, you might be a little bit bored right now because you're saying, all right, sure. Trade for Jesus Sanchez. Ooh, they floated Alec Bohm. Nice. Don't worry. I got something cooking for you, and I'm sure Fink does as well. So Kevin McGonigal is our starting shortstop. We completed that trade for Jesus Sanchez. How are you addressing the starting pitching?
I feel like you're a lot more creative than me. I think you got a big idea that I want to hear because I'm just looking at that mid tier of free agency and trying to find an arm. So why don't you give me your pitch first?
I just think that the Tigers are in a unique position where they can trade really solid prospects that a lot of teams would like, but are still not a part of their core four. You know what I mean? With McGonigal, Max Clark, Briseño, and Rayner. I think if you keep those four, Tigers fans will be happy. But from 5 to 10 in their system, there's still a lot of really good prospects. So I think that they should trade for Mackenzie Gore. Because Mackenzie Gore comes with years of control. He's 26 years old. You need another stud guy, especially if Tarek Skubal leaves. And they can give the Nationals a really sound trade package. They'd be trading Jordan Yost, Arm's fifth best prospect in the Tiger system, just right outside that core four, shortstop, complex league. I think Thyron Lorenzo, I think that's how you pronounce his first name. He's number 7th in Arm's top 10 Tigers prospect. He's a catcher in Double-A. And Hao-Yu Lee, number 8, second baseman in Triple-A. That's 3 top 8 prospects in a really good system for Mackenzie Gore. Now, I thought, what about a Bryce Rayner for Mackenzie Gore straight swap? But I don't know if the Tigers would want to give up Rayner, because if they don't think McGonigal, and I was actually talking with Jack before this to kind of figure out this trade package, if they don't believe that McGonigal is going to stick it short long term, then Bryce Rayner is their shortstop of the future, and they likely don't want to trade him. So if your dream middle infield, as the Tigers progress, is Rayner and McGonigal, and then Briseño is either your first baseman or catcher of the future, I think you can trade these 3 guys. It would make Tigers fans feel better. But in the Nationals, instead of betting all on one player who might be a better prospect, you get still 3 really solid prospects across 3 different levels. You get a complex guy you can dream on that is still, right near the top 100 prospects. You get a catcher in Double-A who has produced at mostly every level. I know he had a down year last year. And Hao-Yu Lee, who's also progressed through every level as well. Now, again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know a ton about prospects. I don't.
I'm not either.
But I can trust Arm's rankings and try to come up with deals that resemble things that we've already talked about with Mackenzie Gore. I think the Nationals would at least take a good, strong look at a deal like this. And if I'm the Tigers, I'm not immediately hanging up if they say, actually, we need Briseño.
Yeah.
I'm not hanging up because the Tigers are in a unique spot where they have 3 top prospects. They already have a young roster. The last year of Skubal, they could really compete this year. So again, I'm not hanging up the phone if they ask for Briseño. I'm just not.
No, I wouldn't. And I almost wonder if it has to go there. My thought was the Nationals would probably want one prospect that was better. One, even if it's a 2-for-1, but you're getting Briseño, that might be a better trade for them. And I also wonder just how the market plays out here, what they want to do with Gore. if Peralta gets traded this week and Skubal's presumably not getting dealt now or at the deadline, Mackenzie Gore could be like the crown jewel of the trade deadline, where you might set a really high price now, and if you don't get a deal done, you hold, because if Mackenzie Gore can have a first half like he did last year, you could trade him for more. But I mean, I do like the shape of the idea of the Tigers picking up Gore. That's better than anything they could do in free agency. So
Much better.
you
Because
know,
it's better than giving Gallon the money, and we don't want to increase their payroll much. I was thinking about Chris Bassett, but I think he might be sneaky expensive.
yeah, I had Bassett as an idea too, but it was almost like if you win the ARB case against Skubal, you can just sign Bassett. But I think Bassett, he might get 15 million, for 1 year, and he doesn't raise your ceiling much. He does give you innings that you absolutely need with a rotation that already has a lot of risk in it. But yeah, it's a lot of money when you're cash strapped to spend on Bassett.
And it made me think, what about Nick Martinez? I think it's a pretty easy signing as well. I think they could lose the Skubal arbitration hearing and still go for a Nick Martinez. But the Tigers need a bell cow. And if you're telling me that Skubal is likely on his way out, and it's not like next year's free agency class is something that you want to put all of your dollars in, especially with an impending lockout, trade from this glut of great prospects and go get a potential ace level starter in Mackenzie Gore. Now you look at the 4.1 ERA, I'm going to scream until my face is red. I'm telling you, this guy could be an elite starter in this league. We saw what he looked like in the first half when the Nationals and he were engaged in the season, and then they took an absolute free fall, and he struggled, but he's 26 years old with just elite stuff. Like, he has the ability to lead Major League Baseball in strikeouts. That's how good he looks when he's on. I mean, you're a Mets fan. You've seen him plenty. Wouldn't you agree with me?
100%. It really was such a drastic set of splits where I want to say it was a 6.75 ERA in the second half. I think his ERA was close to 3 going into the All-Star break. So, I mean, he fell off a cliff. The strikeouts also fell off a cliff. And that's the one sort of tricky thing about trying to trade him now, is how do people perceive that second half? But yeah, the upside, you're not going to find, I think at this point, a better pitcher on the trade market that you get a little bit of control of. Who was this? 2 years, right? Of Gore, I think.
Gore, yeah,
let me look it up real quick. So, look, it gives you a stopgap after Skubal presumably walks. And also, if you want to blow it up at that point too, like or at least trade Gore next year because you don't have as much fan attachment to him, you could always basically rent Gore for a year and flip him when he's a rental too. So I think we should lock in that trade. It's just a matter of what prospects we're gonna end up dealing.
I think for the 2 years of control for Mackenzie Gore, he's making $5.6 million this year. It's going to go up a little bit next year, but nothing crazy unless he just absolutely dominates. Then that would be awesome. But I'm sure Tigers would be happy to pay him. Oh, wait, no, they wouldn't be. They'd go low at arbitration. But he's not going to be crazy expensive. You're not giving up your top 4 prospects, who are all like well within the top 50 prospects in Major League Baseball. You're giving up guys outside of that. The 5th, the 7th, and the 8th best prospect in a good system. I think it's pretty fair. And you could say maybe it's a little bit of an overpay. But the Tigers can afford to do it.
Based on what pitchers are getting on the market, I don't think it's an overpay.
Yeah.
Like, I think if we wanted to, like if the Tigers had a comp pick that they could throw in, I think we could even do that. But we should lock it in with the prospects. And I think that makes them a lot better. My big move for the Tigers was going to be trying to find the money to sign Ranger Suarez. So that got taken off the table before the show started. And I think Mackenzie Gore is as good of a pitcher you can add. The only other name I'd throw out there, if you really are bargain shopping, I think the fact that Jose Quintana signed for $4.5 million last year kind of pigeonholed him to a lower salary tier than he probably should be making. I don't think there's any reason why Quintana is making significantly less than Bassett, but I think he will. So, like, that's a guy that they could also sign. But if we're getting Gore, I think that's the best move we can make.
Yeah. So those are the moves. And I also want to address this bullpen with a guy with swing and miss stuff. And because I'm not signing a free agent pitcher, we are trading for one. So you just brought in $5.6 million. Jesus Sanchez also does not make that much money. So I think now we spend.
Yeah,
In
we could
Tigers
spend
terms.
$5 million on a reliever.
I was thinking, could we spend 9 a year over 2 years on Sir Anthony Dominguez?
Yeah.
Much?
I mean, so that's what we said that's about 20 million altogether. I feel like
Yeah.
they can look. You got your last
know.
year Scooble, and none of it's long-term money. I think they can sign Sir Anthony Dominguez.
Because the thing is, if you lose Scooble next year, that's another reason why I want Mackenzie Gore, and I went Gore over Peralta. Because if you're telling me you're going to lose Scooble and then you lose Peralta after a year,
no,
I'd rather have Gore for that year potentially if Scooble leaves. And who knows, maybe you can work out an extension with him. Probably not, though, because they don't want to do that. But at least they have a guy at the top of the rotation in 2027 if Scooble leaves.
No, 100%. I like that for sure.
So you think we can sign Sir Anthony? Am I being too greedy here?
No, because you didn't spend 15 on Bassett. So I mean, you put together what'd you say Gore's making again? It's
5.6. And also, this is another good point. Gore is a Boris client. LOL. Good luck with that. Exactly. So
okay.
He's not signing an extension.
Again, I honestly think this would be a situation where you're almost renting Gore, where if you're not in a position to win now in 2027, you're trading Gore next offseason and getting, who knows, might even get more. If he has a great season, you might get more next year than you gave up for him because you're kind of buying a little bit low now. So I think it's a really smart addition. And I do think when you think about, could they sign Bassett? Literally, you combine the Gore money with Sir Anthony Dominguez, and it's pretty much within spitting distance of the same amount of money. So I think we can sign Dominguez also.
I'd rather sign Dominguez and just not trade for Jesus Sanchez if we are worried about the money too.
Yeah.
Like I would just won't do that one. So we aren't bringing on the 7 million. Let me just make sure another Jesus Sanchez contract. Jesus Sanchez is, yeah, exactly what I thought. 6.8 million. So let's just not do that. Wenzel Perez is a right fielder. Maybe McKinstry can go out there and play because we brought up McGonigal. McKinstry doesn't have a spot. They can platoon out there if they want. We don't trade for Jesus Sanchez. I'd rather sign Sir Anthony Dominguez. I need someone in this bullpen who's going to strike out guys. Sir Anthony Dominguez struck out over 11 per 9 last year. It's really hard to find consistent relievers that are going to be able to do that. And then you bring in Gore and you start McGonigal at short. There we go.
All right. Do we have them? If we're not going to trade for Sanchez, you want to just sign like Mike Tauchman?
Sure.
It's like $2 million. He made 1.95 million last year.
I like that. I like Mike Tauchman. He's got a little bit of magic still.
Why not? I could see him being part of this scrappy Tigers lineup. Why not? Old Mike Tauchman.
All right, so that's our offseason for Detroit. Trade for Mackenzie Gore, for Yost. What was my trade again? Lorenzo, Yost, and Hao Yu Lee. So those are their 5th, 7th, and 8th best prospects in a really good system. Nationals get a great return there for Mackenzie Gore. We signed Sir Anthony Dominguez to a 2-year, $18 million deal, 9 a year, $1 million less than Kyle Finnegan, which I think is about fair.
At this point, probably, yeah.
Because Dominguez has been a little bit more up and down. Finnegan's been much more consistent. Finnegan's also closed a lot of games.
We're getting into the weeds, but you could front load the first year, put an opt out in the second one, but who cares? I mean,
something like
I think it's fine. You're in the ballpark.
And then we signed Mike Tauchman to a 1-year, $2 million deal.
Done.
Tigers can win the division with this team for sure.
They can win the division by doing nothing. It's the AL Central. I mean,
hey, you're sleeping on the American League a little bit. There are some good teams in this division, and we're going to talk about one in a second, and that is the Minnesota Twins. Can I get a quick whoosh podcast? Playing general manager for the Minnesota Twins. Now, people laughed as I segued into this about there are some good teams in the American League Central. Now, I was talking about the Guardians and the Royals, and of course, the Tigers. I think I have a sickness.
Why? Because you believe in the Twins still?
It's called Twins fever. Every year.
You start talking yourself into it?
I think that this is a great long shot to win the division. I know, and I can already see. I see podcast P. I've never seen his eyebrows that high on his head. Like I think his eyebrows were right here. I don't know how high they got, but it makes sense because who would like the Minnesota Twins? But while they've talked about blowing it up, they didn't, and they have some good players. Let me just podcast P. Do you happen to just have their roster resource that you could just put up for the people to look at? Just the people to look at for a second, because when's the last time, and be honest, everyone in our YouTube chat, everyone here listening on audio, when's the last time you looked at the Twins roster?
Today when I was preparing for this.
Exactly. And your opinion was?
Well, my opinion was this is a weird team that sneaky has a, I mean, I don't know. They traded so much depth. My big concern looking at this roster is the bullpen, like first and foremost, and then just all of the countless typical injury risks that we have with the Twins of like, you need Buxton and Royce Lewis to be awesome for this team to be really good. But I mean, sure. I mean, roster resource has Josh Bell batting third. I'd love to hear how they're gonna win. Like, to me, them winning the division, like I actually slightly agree with you about this being an interesting bet because it's the Central. But I mean, I don't know.
Comment. Fact: 90% of podcast hosts quit believing in the Minnesota Twins right before they all stay healthy for real this time. I couldn't agree with you more. You quit before you get to the diamond mine. We've all seen those memes. Podcast P, do we got the roster resource? Because I'm telling you, folks, you just got to look at it for a second. Podcast P, I can see him hunting right now. It's coming. Or maybe he's not.
Oh, wrong. Oh, sorry. Wrong graphic.
Bold take number one, Twins win the pennant. Didn't they? That was the year they did make the playoffs, though. I'm just saying. They did make the playoffs.
Peter, that was before this year.
No, it wasn't.
I'm trying.
Podcast Peak. You know what? I'm just going to read it. Byron Buxton in center field. One of the best center fielders in baseball. Luke Keyshaw at second base. If you haven't heard of Luke Keyshaw yet, he put up a 134 WRC plus. He's a top prospect. He's their second base. Yeah, Josh Bell ain't great, but he's an average hitter in Major League Baseball. Matt Wallner strikes out a lot, but hits the living piss out of the baseball.
You know what?
115 WRC plus guy.
I gotta interject
here, Fink.
I had to interject now because throughout various points of the offseason when Aram was talking about Munetaka Murakami, and he like would say, you know, like worst case, it's like Matt Wallner. It's changed the perception of Matt Wallner to me. Where for Murakami, I was like, there's no way I'd want to sign this guy if he can be Matt Wallner. But now I'm like, Matt Wallner, sneaky pop, huh? How about
Matt Wallner's got sneaky pop. I've always been a Matt Wallner guy. Ryan Jeffers doesn't strike out. 113 WRC plus. We'll take that. Trevor Larnach. Baseball sickos love Trevor Larnach. He's like if Matt Wallner lost like 20 pounds and lost a little bit of pop, but still not bad. Royce Lewis. We know how many grand slams he could hit in a week. Brooks Lee, I still believe in. I don't care. I said 4 years ago when he was at Cal Poly that he's going to lead the league in doubles one year. And 1 year, I think he will. And Austin Martin in left field. There isn't a bad hitter in the lineup. There isn't a bad hitter in the lineup. And then, and
how many good hitters
in the comment section, somebody tell me a bad hitter in the lineup, and you can't say Austin Martin. You can't say it. Josh Bell had a 359 ex-Woba last year, higher than Bo Bichette and Geraldo Perdomo. See, everybody's starting to get it here. Look at the bench. Alex Jackson, Edouard Julien, Cody Clemens. It's not that bad. And James Outman. Look at that potential. And then the rotation. Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober. Zebby Matthews, I expect to take a next step. Simeon Woods Richardson is okay. He's a 5-starter. The bullpen needs work. But this is not a bad team. You compare this roster to the rest of the American League Central, and the Twins are going to be like 15-1 to win the Central, and I'm going to bet them. And I'll be happily donating to the Twins charity fund. But I'm telling you, this team's got something. Again, they got to stay healthy. More likely than not, I'm going to be wrong, but this is the team everybody's given up on that I ain't. And I understand why they're not blowing it up. This team's not that bad.
Really?
It's not that bad.
I
It's
mean,
really not that bad.
I don't think it's that bad, but I think you're painting a very rosy picture of what this team's going to be, especially when they went 23 and 43 in the second half last year with most of the same guys that are on this team right now.
Yeah, Royce Lewis, no one has ever said James Outman with that level of enthusiasm. May I remind, so everybody reminds me of my bad takes. That's everyone's favorite pastime on this freaking show. What about when Jack pleaded with me on my top 100 that how is James Outman not a top 100 player? That happened 2 years ago. That happened. Okay?
I mean,
everybody's making fun of me. Just remember that.
If there's not a bad hitter in this lineup, I mean, what can we do, Peter? It sounds like they're set, right?
That's kind of my pitch. I don't think they should do much outside of a couple of relievers. I'm good with this team. I will ride into battle with the Minnesota Twins in 2026.
Okay, well, I do have a bat that I think they should add. So,
Peyton, can you put me on a meme with Jon Snow when in that battle where he takes out the sword in Game of Thrones and all the horsebacks? Everyone's put me on there in a Minnesota Twins hat. I'm ready.
You're asking him to do so much live producing right now. Hey, this image in my mind. Can you please
live produce the Twins to win 95 games and just put together a roster for us? No, I was kidding. Okay. Talk to me.
Okay. So the one bat that I was looking at a couple places. For one, I personally, I think that they should be looking to maybe replace Austin Martin in that lineup. I think they should be looking at just getting above average hitters. Can they get a Miguel Andujar where if Royce Lewis is hurt, he could play third? If you have some at bats in the corner outfield, can they spend $14 million over 2 years and just get Miguel Andujar? Because I think that gives them a better puncher's chance to have a decent lineup that can contend in that division.
That's why Andujar is a perfect addition, because he rakes and nobody realizes it. Just like every Minnesota Twin. Just like every single Minnesota Twin. They rake and nobody even understands it.
I had
Miguel Andujar.
I had 3 free agents on the position player side that made sense. It was Andujar as a possible fit. That's the best bat. If you wanted to just circle back on Willie Castro, I think you could get him for next to nothing with how bad he was after the deadline, and he's comfortable there. So that's another one. And then I was just thinking, who can bring some FU to a Twins team that has to have a chip on their shoulder? And I thought Tommy Pham. So those are just buy low. You're not spending much, but maybe you get more out of it. But I think Andujar is clearly the best of those 3 by far.
Is it crazy that I don't really want to spend on bats? I don't want to get multiple bats. I'm fine.
No, I'm fine with just one. I'm fine with just Andujar, and that's it.
Because I would like to bring in some bullpen arms. I'd like to bring in guys who they could potentially flip at the deadline, who might have some upside.
I only wanted to bring up those other ones in case you wanted to save and spend less on Andujar and sign Willie Castro instead. But I think Andujar is the best fit.
We could sign Willie Castro. I just look at the Twins bench and I'm like, well, they have Julian, they have Cody Clemens in the infield. Do they need another guy like that? But Andujar could play an outfield role too. Yeah, I think we bring in Andujar and then we go just add some low-cost bullpen guys and then go win this division.
Okay, so what are the low-cost bullpen guys you liked?
I love Evan Phillips. I've been giving him to anyone. I think that you're taking a swing on a potential closer. And if the Twins aren't playing well by the deadline and he's pitching well, you could flip him. But really low-cost guys who I think have flashed big-time potential and have fallen off because of injuries. I think Lou Trevino in 2022, the guy was striking out 11.5 per 9.
There we go.
There, for all the audio crowd, podcast P just flashed myself with Jon Snow just going into battle with the Minnesota Twins hat. That's me right there.
That's the thumbnail, I think.
That's the thumbnail. That's the thumbnail. So it could be an Evan Phillips. It could be a Lou Trevino. There's multiple options. You could kind of convince me about anyone, but I want these 1 year, $1 to $4 million deals who you could potentially flip at the deadline or just happen to their upside.
My reliever that I picked was a guy that started his career in Minnesota, and that's Ryan Presley. That's just a guy that's pitched in leverage before and is going to cost you nothing. So that was my pitch.
Let's do Ryan Presley and Evan Phillips.
All right.
Ryan Presley, Evan Phillips, and Miguel Andujar.
I got one more.
Talk to me.
Starting pitcher. How about signing Jordan Montgomery? You don't have a lefty in that rotation. You don't have that much depth. I honestly think you could sign him for like $4 million with incentives that might take it up to like 10 if he gets to a certain amount of innings pitched. But you never know. He's coming off TJ. Like there is a little bit of upside here. And if worst case you somehow are like the one team that makes that a spring training without any injuries, and you got to push Bailey Ober or Zebby Matthews or somebody to the bullpen.
First, we are never pushing Bailey Ober out of this rotation. Bailey Ober is a good pitcher. He struggled last year, but he is a good pitcher. We cannot forget that Bailey Ober is a good pitcher.
I'm just saying Jordan Montgomery has had more success in his career than anybody in this rotation outside of the top two. So
if we're pushing out anybody, it's Simeon Woods Richardson.
That's fine. I mean, you let them all compete in camp. I mean, you would pretty much have to like give Jordan Montgomery the nod that he was going to be in the rotation to start the season. But
another good point here. They also have Mick Abel and Taj Bradley hanging out in AAA.
So maybe you don't need a starter, but that was just the one where I looked at and I said, you can get him. You can sign this guy by just basically guaranteeing him a spot in the rotation, and there's some upside. That's pretty much it.
Next up on the Just Baseball show, do the Twins have more pitching depth than the Boston Red Sox?
No.
Podcast B is giving me the thumbs up. That's not no, he just flipped that to down. No, they actually not even close. But they do have pitching depth. There's something about this lineup. There's something about it. I can't quit them. I can't quit these Minnesota Twins. So I agree with you. I'll sign Jordan Montgomery. I'll sign Miguel Andujar. I'll sign Evan Phillips. And we'll sign, who was the last reliever we talked about?
Ryan Presley.
It's not a super fun offseason, but you got a lot of upside there. And that's what the Twins are. And Twins fans, they understand. And maybe they don't even see the upside, but I do. But I feel like they're a ticking time bomb. And you don't want to be near them when it goes off because they're going to beat you. Maybe. If they keep Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez, this rotation is not bad and the lineup is not bad. They just need to address the bullpen. That's it. Add a couple bats. They can compete in this division. I've said that like 20 times. I must be projecting something. Maybe I don't actually believe this, but I do.
I really do appreciate the confidence in the Twins because we need more voices to support teams that have no chance. So, I mean, I just can't. I don't know how this ends in anything but the Twins shopping Joe Ryan at the trade deadline, but maybe it's the year. Maybe you're right, and everything works. And Royce Lewis has a 140 WRC plus, and he's an all-star. And Byron Buxton stays healthy for 2 years in a row for the first time in his career, and it all comes together. Maybe.
I'm looking right now. The Minnesota Twins on BetMGM are 8-1 to win the division. That will likely be a wager made by me. On BetMGM. Remember to use code
a full unit?
No, probably not a full unit. Probably not even a half unit either. Probably just a little sprinkle just because I want it in my portfolio. It's probably not going to be that substantial, but I want it in the portfolio. Think anything else before we go talk to Hembo and fill out our 2026 Hall of Fame bracket?
I just want to public pressure you into putting a full unit on this because I know you don't actually believe in the Twins. But yeah, I
swear to you, I do. This is not just something.
Full unit then. Full you.
But again, it's all about value. Like I did kind of think it would be closer to like 10-1 or something. 8-1 is not the greatest price in the world. But if the other teams get a lot of steam and you put me at 10-1,
you just need the Royals or someone to make a big splash and finish off their offseason strong, where it just gives you that 10-1, and then it's right where you want it to be.
Twins, we're coming. All right, let's go talk to Hembo. Fill out our Hall of Fame ballot. For everybody listening, if you have been enjoying the Just Baseball show so far, the best way to support, rate and review, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, 5 stars. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to like the video. Thank you for all the comments. We'll still be live here talking to Hembo, and make sure to subscribe as well. Without further ado, Podcast P, let's go talk to Paul Hembekides, filling out our 2026 Hall of Fame 2026 class results will be announced on January 20th live on MLB Network. And we have the man, the friend of the program, Paul Hembekides, of ESPN. Hembo, thank you so much for joining us. Hembo's History Corner, we're going to go over our Hall of Fame ballots in this episode. And Podcast P, if you could tell the people who's on the 2026 Hall of Fame ballot, we got Bobby Abreu, Carlos Beltran, Ryan Braun, Mark Burley, Shin-Soo Choo, Edwin Encarnacion, Gio Gonzalez, Alex Gordon, Cole Hamels, Felix Hernandez, Torrey Hunter, Andrew Jones, Matt Kemp, Howie Kendrick, Nick Markakis, Daniel Murphy, Dustin Pedroia, Hunter Pence, Andy Pettit, Rick Porcello, Manny Ramirez, Alex Rodriguez, Francisco Rodriguez, Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley, Omar Vizquel, and David Wright. Here are the names. Hembo, I'm really, really excited. We were also talking in code before we press the record button because we don't want to tell each other who's on each other's ballots. That's the fun of this episode.
Of that, there's no question. It's good to see you, my friend, and it's a pleasure to be on with Podcast P as well, who has now, I think, enjoyed a lot of newfound celebrity on the podcast. You guys are doing a fabulous job. And look, I mean, I don't know how much time either of you or those in our audience has spent at the Baseball Hall of Fame. I know there's a lot of cynicism associated with the Hall of Fame these days, but if you spend a quaint February afternoon in those hallowed halls all by yourself, as I've had the chance to do so many times, it does come with a touch of magic, I have to be honest. And so I might consider myself something of a sappy baseball romantic in some sense, but at the same time, you and I are both numbers crunchers, a big part of our ball knowledge, it goes without saying. And so the foundations of my Hall of Fame arguments for all of these players are their numbers. But as you and I both know, the magic of baseball is sometimes you have to dip into the qualitative. Sometimes you have to dip into the things that former players and coaches say about these guys, because not everything in baseball can be quantified as much as I would like to believe it can be.
Totally agree. And I love the point that you made about the magic of Cooperstown. I've been there too. And it's just a bucket list item. And real quick, before we get into our ballots, where would you rank going to the Hall of Fame on your baseball bucket list? Because I say that the World Baseball Classic has to be on every baseball fan's bucket list. Where would you rank going to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown?
It's up there. It's up there along with visiting Wrigley, visiting Fenway. It's a bucket list item for sure, and it has to rank inside my top 5 because, as I said many times to you, enjoying baseball's present, to me, is amplified so much so by learning more about its past. It's one of the few things in life, the more you become enriched by learning as to what came before you, the more you enjoy watching it now. So watching Jose Ramirez play baseball now is made considerably more effective if you know all the third basemen that have come before him and are represented in those hallowed halls. To me, it's part of the genius of baseball is that we have 150 years of rich history. It's a sort of foundational attribute of what we are as a country, truly, and the Baseball Hall of Fame represents it so well in 2 very separate places, though. Of course, the museum tells you how we got here, and the plaque gallery is a place where we glorify baseball's holy of holies, if you will. And it is a magical place, and it is most definitely something that I would say, if you're a big fan of this game, has to be on your bucket list somewhere in your top 5.
So let's discuss the players that we think should be headed to Cooperstown in 2026. Podcast P, if you could flash the 2026 ballot again, just to give everybody a refresher here on YouTube. These are the names. I personally have 4 players on my ballot. Hembo has 5. Now, you could argue that there should be more. I'm sure there will be some out there that would argue there should be less. But since you have 5, I'd like you to go first. And I want you to start with your no-brainer, like the number 1 guy on your ballot. Who is it? Because I assume we're aligned there.
I'm not so sure that we're aligned there because obviously I suppose you might say a saving grace of this exercise is that you don't necessarily have to go in any kind of order. But for the purposes of this discussion, if I had the opportunity to only check one guy's name, that this year would be Andrew Jones. This is his 9th year on the ballot. He reached 66% last year. He's trending at 84% right now when it comes to the public ballots on Ryan Thibodeau's tracker. Of course, as you well know, 75% is the threshold. But for me, Andruw Jones is someone who definitively gets my vote. And if I could only vote for one guy on this ballot, if for some reason those were the rules, he'd get mine.
434 career home runs, a career 62.7 B-WAR, one of the greatest defensive center fielders of all time. I think he has a similar case to Nolan Arenado, who I think will be on the ballot soon enough, known as one of the greatest defenders, but also swung an excellent bat. I agree. He is on my ballot as well. Anything else on Jones before we move on? Because to me, it's a slam dunk.
What I would just add on Andruw Jones, as you might imagine, I have numbers coming out of my ears here, but I think one could make a good faith argument that he is quite literally the best defender of any outfielder that has ever lived. I think people generally understand he was great, but by using fielding runs both by Baseball Reference's calculation and by Fangraphs calculation, he's number one by both. Baseball Reference's top three is Jones, then Roberto Clemente, then Willie Mays. Fangraphs' top three is Andruw Jones, Willie Mays, and Paul Blair, who was a legendary center fielder for the Orioles once upon a time, which is to say, if you decided to just line up the best defensive catchers of all time, Pudge and Johnny Bench most likely. The best shortstop is Ozzie Smith, of course. The best second baseman, probably Frankie Frisch. And the best center fielder, I mean, these are all slam dunk Hall of Famers, or at least they should be. Center field is a premium position, and one could make a good faith argument that Andruw Jones played it more adeptly than anybody that has ever lived. Not to mention the fact, of course, that you mentioned 435 homers on a Braves team that, within the context of the National League East at least, was a dynasty. To me, he is a slam dunk Hall of Famer.
Next up, who's on your ballot?
Next up for me would be Carlos Beltran on his fourth year on the ballot. He's trending at 90% right now and reached 70% last year. I think his case is fairly straightforward, but because it has taken now at least 4 years, I'm curious what you think his role in the 2017 Astros sign stealing scandal has caused, because in my judgment, at least, this is someone that could have been on the in the Hall of Fame a year or two or even three ago, had he not been the one guy that Rob Manfred singled out in that sordid tale.
Yeah, it's a tough argument. Where do you sit on that? Because we both have him on our ballot. For me, it didn't, obviously the character clause is something to be looked at, but I don't feel that violated it enough to take him off my ballot.
I feel the exact same way. I mean, we could say he was the godfather of the scandal and agree to it. We understand that he was the only player that Rob Manfred acknowledged as such. But we can also acknowledge that it cost him the opportunity to manage. It did not parenthetically cost Alex Cora or AJ Hinch future opportunities to manage. And it already has cost him an opportunity to be a first or second or third ballot Hall of Famer. This is a player who ranks 25th all time in career extra base hits, an 86% career stolen base rate, and was plus 72 as a defender in the 10 seasons spanning 1999 through 2008. And as you well know, was a legendary postseason performer. Remember 04 with the Astros? He slashed 435, 536, 1022. He's one of 109 players with 200 plate appearances in the history of the postseason, and he is the only one with an OPS clear of 1,000. I think his regular season career leaves at least something to be desired, but when you add on top of the fact that he was that good in the regular season, you know, a 65 WAR player if you average the metrics out, with the fact that he was one of the best postseason hitters that literally ever lived, I view his case as being slam dunk, and I think he's more than had to wait long enough as a result of that 2017 scandal.
Yeah, the 400-plus home runs, the 300-plus stolen bases just kind of puts it over the edge, right? He's 275 career hits away from 3,000 with a 70 career WAR. That is a slam dunk, even regular season Hall of Famer. And then you factor in the incredible postseason success. He's won a Rookie of the Year. He's won a number of Gold Gloves, 9-time All-Star. It's just as simple as that. And of course, the 2017 sign stealing scandal is something to consider. And maybe that doesn't make him a first ballot Hall of Famer, which I could understand. But he's a Hall of Famer, and I would give him a vote.
Yeah, I mean, he's not Mays, he's not Cobb, he's not Speaker, he's not Mantle, he's not Trout, he's not Griffey, and he's not DiMaggio. After that glut, he's then in the next class of player with people like Duke Snyder and Richie Ashburn. And I think that's a bar that he has most certainly cleared.
Yes.
And when you couple the extraordinary postseason production, you and I view this as a very similar player whose induction is long overdue.
So I believe those are the only two slam dunks. And I know that you probably think that there is a certain second baseman who used to play for the Phillies who is a slam dunk. I also have Chase Utley on my ballot, but I don't think it's a slam dunk. Do you?
I do. I think that Chase Utley is unlikely to get in this year. Right now, trending at 69%. He was at 40% last year. I think by the time he reaches expiration date, he will almost certainly be in based upon the modernity of the electorate. It's a 57 career WAR composite, again, averaging the different ways in which that's measured. And Chase Utley's peak, as you well know, was so extraordinary that I am more than willing to forgive his lack of cumulative stats during the regular season. I went back and looked and found that from 2005 through 2009, he ranked 5th across baseball in runs created. So that was just the how effectively he hit. He was 1st in defensive runs saved, 2nd in extra bases taken, and thus 2nd in WAR behind only Albert Pujols. He was genuinely one of baseball's best players in every attribute of the game. I put together a list of the most consecutive 7 WAR seasons by any second baseman in history. He's one of 4, and the other 3 are Joe Morgan, Charlie Gehringer, and Eddie Collins, and they are all slam dunk Hall of Famers. They are second base royalty. So I'm more than happy to acknowledge that Chase Utley had a career considerably less than any of those guys did, based on a variety of factors. But I'm one that most certainly wants to reward greatness. And he wasn't great for a year or two. He was definitively great for a 5-year span. And I think as a result was, I think in hindsight, one of the most underrated players of his era.
Do you think he's a top 10 second baseman of all time?
I have him on the fringe of my top 10, but we also have to consider that Chase Utley was a sneaky great performer in the postseason too. He had 5 homers in 2009 against the Yankees, you'll recall. That tied Reggie Jackson's record from 1977. You know, once he went 27 consecutive games reaching base in the postseason, that was a record when he did it. He slugged .795 in the World Series as a member of the Phillies. Chase Utley was, at least when he was on the Phillies, an all-time great performer in the postseason and specifically the World Series. He had that legendary moment nabbing Jason Bartlett at the plate in Game 5 of the 2008 World Series as a part of the clinch over Tampa Bay. This guy had a Hall of Fame peak. We can argue till we're blue in the face as to whether or not he accumulated enough. Obviously, it's fewer than 1,900 career hits. There's no question, however, that it was a Hall of Fame peak.
It was a Hall of Fame peak, and you're starting to get me to lean that this is a slam dunk. I mean, if we're talking about an arguably top 10 second baseman of all time who has performed at every level, including when the lights were the brightest, his peak is clearly Hall of Fame, as you can see that just compared to the other Hall of Fame second baseman. Not only is he's eclipsing average, he's 5 wins above average in terms of the 7-year peak when it comes to WAR. I think it pretty much is a no-brainer. The only reason he falls short would be what you said about accumulation. But I tend, when I'm voting for the Hall of Fame, to look more towards the peak rather than accumulation. Like when I watch Chase Utley at his peak, I say, that's a Hall of Famer. There are other guys who might be similar in the WAR department. When I watched him, I said, that's a very good player. But the thing is, that was a very good player for a longer period of time. And then when you look at the numbers at the end of their career, they feel like a Hall of Famer, but were they? And that's why next up, I'm curious if you have Bobby Abreu on your ballot, because that is the player that I struggled with the most, and I did leave off my ballot.
I left Bobby Abreu off my ballot too, and I did do it with a considerable amount of conviction. He is going to become a very fashionable analytics writer, case to be made, because Bobby Abreu did all the things that WAR rewards. Namely, he walked a bleep ton. I mean, the reason why Bobby Abreu is being considered a Hall of Famer now, when at no point during his career did we consider him that, is because we now know that walks were way more valuable than we realized 20 years ago. But even so, even despite the 60 career WAR, according to Baseball Reference, that was a time in which position players were accumulating a ton of it. If you go to his season by season outputs, there was only one time in his entire career that he by WAR ranked among the top 10 players in his own league. That was in the National League in 1999. I view Bobby Abreu as a definitive no, because while Bobby Abreu's career may have been undervalued at the time, I am by no means willing to say that because of what we know about WAR now, all of a sudden he is. There was not a game in which Bobby Abreu played in which anyone at the time considered him a Hall of Fame player. And while that's not a definitive argument or necessarily like a trump card, I do think there is some value to that. I don't like the creation of the Hall of Famer long after they retired based upon metrics that we value now that we didn't then. I think Bobby Abreu was A, underappreciated at the time, and B, someone who belongs in the Hall of Very Good.
His peak was about 1998 to 2004. And in that time period, he was anywhere from a 5.5 to a 6.5 win player, stole bases, hit home runs. But there was never that 9-win season that a Chase Utley might have, right? There was never that ultra peak. And there was one year where he finished 23rd in MVP voting. Off the top of my head, I'm forgetting the exact year, but it was a 300, 400, 500 slash line with plenty of home runs, and he put up a 6.6 WAR, and Barry Bonds won it that year. But he should have ranked higher in MVP voting, but the point still stands that he never finished top 10 in MVP voting once.
Yeah,
now,
that's
MVP
meaningful.
Voting is not an exact science, but not once.
Correct. It's far from an exact science, but what it does do is provide a snapshot of what we thought the player was at the time.
Yes.
And this is something that I do feel is a fairly important point on which to double click, because we do have the ability now with hindsight to retroactively look at every player now through the modern lens when they didn't have that privilege themselves. Had we had access to WAR then, we would have all understood that Bobby Abreu was far better than we realized. I can also tell you, coincidentally or otherwise, the Phillies didn't win until they traded him, and the Yankees didn't win until they got rid of him either. That, of course, in 2008 and 2009. There is some of that more interpersonal stuff with Bobby Abreu, which I don't like to touch because, as you know, I'm first and foremost a numbers guy and don't favor the reputation argument. What I can tell you, having grown up in Philadelphia and watched Bobby Abreu play hundreds, if not thousands of games, I was old enough then to know that wasn't a Hall of Fame player. And had he not won the home run derby, I'm not sure anyone would have remembered almost anything from his career.
It's a little harsh. That kind of hit me in the heart a little bit, because when I look at Bobby Abreu, the totality of his career, I see a 60-win guy. I see a guy who nearly hit 300, nearly put up a 400 on base percentage, 400 career stolen bases. Definitive, I can't get there. But I understand where you're coming from. But I don't know. I remember watching Bobby Abreu on the Yankees. Definitive hurts my heart a little bit. How about that? But that's the beauty of sometimes Hall of Fame voting, is that you can look at all of the numbers, but sometimes you need some qualitative analysis. And
yeah.
I view that based on how much it hurts my heart sometimes.
This I can acknowledge might be a blind spot for me. I can acknowledge this might be a blind spot for me, but despite all the research I've done, I've not come away with an opinion that varies at all. I think Bobby Abreu belongs in the Hall of Very Good.
So let's go. Who's next on your ballot? Because I only have one more, and I don't want to ruin it. You go ahead.
Okay. Is yours a position player or a pitcher?
It is a pitcher.
Okay. We're going to do the thing where we're going to count down from 3, and we're going to say the name of our pitcher simultaneously. And we're going to go 3, 2, 1. Felix Hernandez.
A-Rod.
Whoa! Okay. Time out. I don't know how well that played on audio. I have 2 pitchers remaining, one of which is Felix Hernandez, one of which is Cole Hamels. You have Francisco Rodriguez as your 4th player on your ballot, and he is your 4th and final player on your ballot. So I'm going to give you the floor, because this is where our ballots differ considerably, and I do appreciate Peyton flashing our ballots in full, along with what appear to be our prom pictures as well. So take it away. What is your case on K-Rod?
Prom pictures is good. So I have always been a proponent for relievers in the Hall of Fame. I've been tweeting so much. We've been talking on the show over the years about Billy Wagner, how I thought it was an absolute travesty that he was not, maybe not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he's one of the greatest relievers of all time. And I do feel like relievers in general don't get their fair shake when it comes to Hall of Fame voting. Francisco Rodriguez, aka K-Rod, is 6th all-time in saves. 6th. He has the most saves in a single season with 62. He has a career 2.86 ERA. When he came up in 2002 as a 20-year-old, he had a 1.93 ERA, 5 winning decisions in a postseason run. That's a reliever record. Nobody has more than 3. And it's tied for the record of any pitcher with Yamamoto, Steven Strasburg, Randy Johnson, and Nathan Eovaldi. In Game 2 of the 2002 World Series, he threw 3 shutout in Game 2. Again, hold in Game 7 to win the World Series, and he's got a 2.95 career postseason ERA. And I think a way to knock Billy Wagner's Hall of Fame case is the fact that he had a 2.926 ERA. Joe Nathan, who's 10th all-time in saves, 8.10. That wasn't K-Rod. 2.95 career postseason ERA. So if you believe that relievers should get a fair shake, single season saves record, 6th all-time career ERA of 2.86. It is an absolute no-brainer. No-brainer for him to make the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. No-brainer.
That is an excellent argument. It's a well-made point. I most definitely will not come off my he falls short talking point, but what I will do is
give it to me.
Definitely
Give it
dive
to me.
back into the numbers. He's not someone that I even all that strongly consider because I don't think he clears the even initial bar. Do I believe that relievers are underrepresented in the Hall of Fame? Yes, and that is absolutely the right nerves to strike. That's a well-made point. He was not good, but great in the postseason. He was a meaningful part of really impactful winning teams. He did it for a long period of time. The win probability that he generated both in the regular season and the postseason puts him in that conversation. But ultimately, for me, to be a reliever that winds up in the Hall of Fame, you've got to clear an extremely high bar. You know, like from a run prevention standpoint, Billy Wagner was something like 40% better than K-Rod was. I think K-Rod belongs more in the class with Joe Nathan and with Craig Kimbrell and players of that ilk who just fall short for me.
Here's the thing. Kimbrell for me is a Hall of Famer. Kenley Jansen for me is a Hall of Famer. And I would have considered voting for Joe Nathan. I think 400 saves to me is 500 home runs. It's 3,000 hits. There are only 7 relievers all time with 400 saves. All time. I think it might have been 8. I got to go check the career leaderboards again. There are 8, relievers with 400 career saves. All of them should be Hall of Famers.
I'm very sympathetic. Look, this is a well-made point. I am sympathetic to your argument that we need to take a long, hard look at the way in which we evaluate relievers in their Hall of Fame candidacy. It's the same point that I will make for the next 2 guys on my ballot from the perspective of starting pitching. My personal belief, this comes down to more baseball ethos. This comes down to more philosophy. Because we know how much easier it is to relieve than it is to start based upon all the evidence that we have, I view that bar to clear as being considerably higher than you believe. But if 10 years from now, you and I are having this conversation, there's a meaningful chance you'll have won me over because over the course of time, I think what we've learned is even though relieving is considerably easier, it's no less valuable if you do it that well, that consistently at a high level in the 8th and 9th inning when the game is on the line.
Here's my counterpoint. The bar should be higher for relievers for everything that you said. But isn't the bar high enough when only 8 players have 400 saves in the history of our game?
If we're going to use saves as our proxy, sure, but that's also a stat that's only been official since 1969. So it is, yes, the history of our game, but it is still a relatively speaking, new thing. It would be approximate to saying this is a designated hitter record, right, which dates to 1973. Again, I'm sympathetic to it. Frank Thomas is in the Hall. Edgar Martinez is in the Hall. David Ortiz is in the Hall. Harold Baines is in the Hall. But we're talking about the select few. To me, K-Rod falls short of the select few. But I am sympathetic to your argument. I'm going to revisit some of the components of win probability to see if maybe, just maybe, I'm viewing those guys a little bit shorter than I probably should.
Let's do Felix and Cole Hamels for you because they did not make my ballot. So
Felix's case is a fairly straightforward one, and it rhymes with this. Over a 6-season span, he was the best pitcher in baseball. He produced 37.2 wins from 09 to 14. And so what I did was I looked back on all of the pitchers that you may say are his contemporaries or his peers from the 21st century. And I just looked at the best 6-season span that they had. Again, his was 37.2. Kersh's was 43. Doc's was 39. Scherzer's 38. Verlander's 37. And Sabathia's 36. That's 5 first ballot Hall of Famers and Felix Hernandez, who I will acknowledge falls very short when it comes to traditional Hall of Fame pitching standards or even somewhat more modern traditional standards. We just saw CC Sabathia get in last year with more than 3,000 strikeouts with 250 wins. But you and I both view peak as an extraordinarily important component of one's Hall of Fame candidacy, as we discussed with Chase Utley. And there's also an element of, for lack of a better term, pornography with Felix Hernandez, which is to say the Supreme Court said, I know it when I see it. I knew Felix Hernandez was a Hall of Famer when I saw him pitch over those 6 seasons. And I thought that he accumulated just enough to clear the bar for me to reach the Hall of Fame. But I acknowledge his case is not definitive. It is borderline.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys where I feel like there were peaks where I did tell myself Felix Hernandez was a Hall of Famer. And then I look and I say, well, the average starting pitcher in the Hall of Fame clears about 70 WAR. And we also totally understanding that we have to recalibrate our thoughts on the modern starting pitcher. But when you really look at the totality of his career, he didn't strike out as many guys as I thought he did. His ERA wasn't quite what I thought it was. And when I'm thinking about guys to get into the Hall of Fame, Felix Hernandez was an excellent pitcher. Him and Bobby Abreu, I had the toughest time leaving off. But they were left off. And then last but certainly not least, Cole Hamels for you. Again, he has, to me, a similar argument to Bobby Abreu, which that's why I'm a little bit confused why you have him, but not Abreu, where it's accumulation, even though he had a very solid peak, but not quite Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's fair pushback. The reason why I'm a yes on Hamels and a no on Abreu is twofold. One, the position. Cole Hamels is a left-handed starting pitcher, and since literally 1990, there's only one lefty starter to debut since then that's in the Hall of Fame, and it's CC Sabathia. It is an underrepresented position. The same cannot be said of corner outfield. And the second thing is that Cole Hamels was a massively impactful postseason pitcher, specifically in 2008 when he was the LCS MVP and the World Series MVP for the Phillies. I will say this, CC Sabathia getting in last year is really what swings the door open for me in relation to Cole Hamels, because it's only 3 fewer WAR than Sabathia with 900 fewer innings, with better run prevention, a better batting line allowance, a higher strikeout rate, a lower walk rate, and he was demonstrably better in the postseason than Sabathia was. And that changeup of his has been the kind of thing that we can romanticize about. In the pitch tracking era, it's the 5th best pitch by any starter behind Kershaw's slider and his 4-seamer, Verlander's 4-seamer, Scherzer's 4-seamer, and then Cole Hamels' changeup comes 5th on that leaderboard. That was a gorgeous pitch. It helped him produce more than 2,500 strikeouts. Again, I'm willing to acknowledge that Cole Hamels is a borderline case. But as I'm going to go back into my lab and check out K-Rod, you're going to go back into yours and check out Cole Hamels and Felix Hernandez.
I will. And you know what the way I was voting for, this, because I think a lot of people are going to say, well, what about Alex Rodriguez? What about Manny Ramirez? What about Andy Pettitte? For me, the steroids thing, I just couldn't do it. And I was also, and basically my main point from that was, if Bud Selig is in the Hall of Fame, if there are other guys that took steroids that are in the Hall of Fame, that doesn't mean now I start to vote that way. If I wouldn't have voted for them in the first place, I'm not now going to change my tune because other people did, if that makes sense.
It does. I mean, there are probably people within the sound of our voice right now that are screaming that how did Alex Rodriguez and Manny Ramirez not front load our ballots? For me, they're literally disqualified. They're disqualified because Manny Ramirez tested positive twice. This is post testing, of course, and A-Rod missed an entire season because he was embroiled in the biogenesis scandal. These are very straightforward issues for me. You and I have discussed ad nauseum the notion of Roger Clemens versus A-Rod and Manny. I view it very definitively. The pre and post testing period in Major League Baseball is a line in the sand that both A-Rod and Manny crossed, and I'm not willing to forgive them for it.
Thoughts on Pettitte? Because Pettitte, it's funny, he originally denied PEDs and then came out in 2002 and said he did it once, and it was just a rehab from an injury. And then 2004, he came out weeks later and said, oh, I also did it in 2004, but I didn't want to drag my father into it. To that, I would say, I think you could have admitted that you did it in 2004 without dragging your father into it. And I also look at, well, what were some of Pettit's best seasons? You can make the argument that it was in 2005. So that is a disqualifier for me. I will always love Pettit as a Yankee fan. And it also brings me back to my last point. It has nothing to do with steroids. I don't know if I would have voted CC in the way that they did so quickly. Now, it would have been maybe he still makes it in for me, and maybe Cole Hamels still makes it in. Again, these are guys that I have to go back into the lab, kind of like you are with K-Rod. Do you have any final points on any guys on the ballot before we say goodbye?
I'll say that Pettit's case, steroids aside, in my opinion, is even less clear when you take a magnifying glass to his postseason career, which is something that people like to look at en masse and say he belongs in because of it. And the other case against Pettit is that he was just nowhere near even one of the best pitchers of his era. He was very clearly lesser than a number of other guys. I've heard cases made for Jimmy Rollins. To me, he falls way short because
me too.
The on base is just so low. I mean, this guy made 7,200 outs in his career. I already told you why I'm a no on Abreu. I'm a no on Mark Burley because he wasn't actually that good at baseball. He just had a lot of war, as my buddy likes to say. And I'm also a no on David Wright and Dustin Pedroia simply because they did not accumulate enough and their peaks weren't great or long enough to make up for it. So there's good faith arguments to be made about a lot of guys on this ballot. My fear is that because it is sort of a weak ballot, what you're seeing is a lot of writers talk themselves into players that never otherwise would.
My last question for you, did Rihanna influence Matt Kemp's candidacy at all for you?
To be honest with you, I know so little about the background of that question that I don't even know how to respond to it. I will say that Matt Kemp got absolutely jobbed one year and that Ryan Braun still owes him a heartfelt apology.
Yeah, Ryan Braun is definitely not on my ballot. So that'll do it. Hembo, thank you so much for coming on. Those are our ballots. Podcast P, if you could flash them one more time before we go. I'm telling you, we got to put respect on K-Rod's name.
I'm into it. I like the talking point, and the last thing I want to do before you take off play, I want to hear what just like Peyton's elevator pitch or his 30-second reaction to both of our ballots, because he had them in his hand. We did not reveal them to each other, and so I want Podcast P to tell us what exactly we got right and what exactly got wrong on the way out.
Podcast P.
So honestly, I do like both of your ballots. I was a huge fan of the edgy pick from Peter with K-Rod, because I do tend to agree with him on the basis of being a bit more open-minded to relievers, especially this century. And because like as it seems like you might disagree, but I think Kimbrel's a slam dunk Hall of Famer. Kenley especially. The one sticking point I have with Hamels, which you kind of addressed, is it's not really a sticking point with Hamels, because I think I wouldn't mind voting for him, but I am a Mark Burley guy. I think I feel like there's some guys that are kind of in a similar tier. And when I look at Burley, I understand the strikeouts aren't quite there, and he only finished top 5 in Cy Young voting twice, but Hamels also finished top 5 in Cy Young voting once or twice as well. And I just don't know. And I think he may have not been a top pitcher for a long time. Maybe it's similar to the Bobby Abreu thing, but I don't know. I am kind of a Burley guy.
Fair enough. The one pushback I'll make is WAR, in his case, specifically on Baseball Reference, is carrying a lot of water for him. Specifically, he is getting so much value from simply pitching in that ballpark. And what Baseball Reference does, not to get too deep into the weeds, is, in my judgment at least, over indexes for that, at least in the case of some players. Because if you check out his Fangraphs WAR, or better yet, his Baseball Prospectus WAR, it is a far cry from what Baseball Reference says he is. And so that's sort of a component of this that I find fascinating, is that you might say, oh, Mark Burley accumulated 60 WAR. That's what he was. But there are 3 different, at least non-proprietary calculations of that, in addition to any number of other ways that things can be evaluated. So I never just look at someone's Fangraphs page or Baseball Reference page and take it from there. I've got to dig a lot deeper. And in Burley's case, I don't think his case holds up specifically because the only real black ink he had was he allowed the most hits in the league. The batting line allowance against him was approximately league average for his entire career. You just can't convince me that that's a Hall of Fame player.
And I'd one small question for you based on your Felix pitch. Were you a Johan for the Hall of Fame guy?
I was. In fact, in
Okay,
our second book,
that's good. That's good.
in our second book, Greeny and I did a list of the 10 best players that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame that are not. Johan Santana is in my top 10. In my judgment, he will be revisited someday.
He has
we'll
to
get
be.
in with some committee.
He fell off the first ballot. He got the same amount of Hall of Fame votes as Jamie Moyer.
Cliff Lee too, by the way. Cliff Lee is also on that list for me.
Oh, I'm cool with that.
Yeah,
your ball knowledge emanating. Attaboy.
The Cliff Lee, the Felix Hernandez, the Johan Santana. It's like these guys. I can picture them.
I think
in my brain.
pitching standards, I think, have to change a bit for the Hall of Fame.
But I also, you know, why I think it's tough to change them is what do we change them to? Because I struggle with that too, and that's why I feel like a hypocrite.
Johan Santana should have had 3 consecutive Cy Young awards. Yeah. He was the best pitcher in the league for 7 seasons. I don't understand. Like, he was, in my opinion, I mean, Felix Hernandez has 700 more innings. So maybe if that's your thing, I get it. But Johan had a better peak than Felix right before Felix's peak.
Yeah,
I agree. Dude. When you look at Felix's seasons and you realize, wait a minute, like there was 2 seasons with an ERA under 3. And a lot of the seasons, it was a mid-3s ERA with below-average strikeout rates. And you're thinking to yourself, what? I swore I watched King Felix strike out 15 guys every single game. And nobody could ever hit that changeup. I feel like I saw that, but then you look at the numbers and you're like, what was I watching? Was I just caught up in the aura?
No, you watched the perfect game over and over and over, and that was it.
He threw a perfect game on my 10th birthday. He's forever my GOAT.
So we might be a Hall of Famer because he did throw it on Podcast P's 10th birthday. Well, Hembo, thank you so much. I know we got to be a little bit time constrained, but I know we could talk Hall of Fame with you for hours and hours and hours. Anything else that you want to get off your chest before we say goodbye?
That's all I got. You said January 20th, we're going to get the announcement. The Baseball Hall of Fame is something that I never want to become insignificant, never want to become irrelevant. So anytime you'll have me on to talk ball and talk the history of baseball, you best know I'll be right here.
Get ready, folks. Hembo's History Corner is going to be a ton of fun this season and hopefully for the rest of our lives. Hembo, thank you so much for coming on Podcast P. Another job well done. Best producer in the world. And I'll cue us out. If everybody's watching us here live on YouTube, the best way to support is to just like and subscribe. And if you're listening on audio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, 5 stars, leave a written review if you would be so kind. Get your Just Baseball merch. And Hembo, plug anything you want before we say goodbye.
You're a good man. This has been a delight, as it always is. I look forward to doing it again soon. Take it easy, boys.
And with that, thank you, everybody.